Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, the podcast that brings you a clear look at what's happening in Congress. I'm Victor.
And I'm Lainey. Today we're diving into a slate of bills, resolutions, and procedural actions that have just moved through the House and Senate, and we'll explain why they matter to everyday Americans.
Let's start with the big appropriations bills. The Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2027, House Bill 9022, was reported to the House. It earmarks $6.255 billion for operating and maintaining existing river and harbor projects, $2.382 billion for new construction, and $175 million for investigations and studies. There's also $223 million for the regulatory program and $40 million for flood control and coastal emergencies.
Those numbers translate into concrete benefits for communities that rely on waterways for commerce, recreation, and flood protection. The bill also includes safeguards, restrictions on reprogramming funds, a requirement that the Secretary of the Interior submit a detailed report to Congress, and prohibitions on using money for water supply reallocation studies or for open lake placement alternatives for dredged material. Those provisions are designed to keep the spending focused and transparent.
Moving to the legislative branch, House Bill 9010 provides $2.1 billion for the House of Representatives. It allocates $900 million for members, representational allowances, $453.9 million for compensation and expenses of officers and employees, and funds for the Capitol Police, the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights, the Congressional Budget Office, and the Architect of the Capitol. Notably, the bill bans procurement of technology equipment from certain Chinese companies and mandates in-person workplace misconduct training for any member under investigation.
That technology ban reflects growing concerns about supply chain security and data privacy. By restricting purchases from firms deemed high risk, the bill aims to protect sensitive congressional information. The cybersecurity provisions and the emphasis on deficit reduction also signal a broader push for fiscal responsibility.
The House also adopted new procedural rules for the 119th Congress with House Resolution 5. Key changes include clarifying the Chief Administrative Officer's role when a member's office is vacant, allowing electronic voting in committees, and formally designating the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. The resolution codifies long-standing practices like handling Article 5 memorials and bill numbering, and it introduces a long-term spending point of order and a requirement that the Congressional Budget Office analyze major proposals.
In plain terms, those rule changes should make the House's inner workings more efficient and transparent. Electronic voting in committees, for example, can speed up the markup process, while the new spending point of order gives members a tool to flag proposals that exceed long-term budget limits.
The House also used a procedural shortcut with House Resolution 1096 to fast-track consideration of the Department of Homeland Security appropriations for fiscal year 2026, House Bill 4213. The resolution waived all points of order, adopted an amendment in the nature of a substitute, and limited debate to 1 hour before the bill moved to the Senate within 3 days.
That's an example of priority consideration. By waiving procedural hurdles, the House can move urgent funding, like Homeland Security, through quickly, especially when time-sensitive operations are at stake.
Shifting to a series of bills focused on foster youth, there's a cluster of legislation that together aims to improve outcomes for young people transitioning out of care. First, the Fresh Starts for Foster Youth Act, House Bill 7529, would require states to consider legal issues such as custody, immigration, and voting rights during case planning. It also lets states use funds from the John H. Chafee Foster Care Program for successful transition to adulthood to pay for legal counseling and related services.
Legal barriers can be a hidden obstacle for foster youth. By mandating that case plans address them, the bill could help these young people secure stable housing, education, and employment.
The CONNECT Act, House Bill 7995, updates the purpose of the same Chafee program to emphasize sustained, supportive relationships with mentors, peers, and adults. It requires the Secretary of Health and Human Services to issue guidance to states and tribal agencies on implementing those relationship-focused goals.
Research shows that consistent mentorship dramatically improves educational attainment and reduces homelessness among former foster youth. This act is trying to embed that evidence into federal policy.
The Fostering the Future Act, House Bill 7432, modernizes the Social Security Act to increase the maximum education and training voucher expand housing support, and create joint guidance between the Departments of Health and Human Services and Housing and Urban Development. It also extends services to expectant and parenting youth through the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program.
That joint guidance is crucial because housing and education services often operate in separate silos. Coordinating them can streamline assistance for a youth who might otherwise fall through the cracks.
Complementing those efforts are three more bills. The Foster Youth Workforce Opportunity Act, House Bill 7343, extends the eligibility window for workforce training from 5 to 6 years for youth who entered foster care at age 14 or older. The Foster Youth Post-Secondary Education Access and Success Act, House Bill 7463, raises the education voucher ceiling from $5,000 to $12,000 and requires states to actively inform eligible youth about the benefit. Finally, the Support for Expectant and Parenting Foster Youth Act, House Bill 7655, ties the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program more closely to foster youth services, allowing states to use program funds for tailored case management.
Taken together, these bills form a comprehensive safety net, from legal counseling to education vouchers, workforce training, and parenting support, aimed at reducing the high rates of homelessness and unemployment among former foster youth.
On the infrastructure front, the Build America 250 Act, House Bill 8870, is a sweeping transportation package. It authorizes funding for federal aid highways, bridge construction, highway safety, public transit, railroads, and hazardous materials transport. It also addresses emerging technologies like autonomous vehicles and intelligent transportation systems, and it invests in a 21st century surface transportation workforce.
That focus on new technology is forward-looking. By earmarking money for autonomous vehicle research and intelligent traffic management, the bill could help modernize our roads while creating high-skill jobs.
In foreign policy, the Ukraine Support Act, House Bill 2913, reaffirms U.S. commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, condemns Russian war crimes, and calls for the immediate withdrawal of Russian forces. It includes economic recovery assistance, war risk insurance, and sanctions such as price cap vessel measures, SWIFT restrictions, and sovereign debt penalties.
The sanctions are designed to pressure Russia financially, while the insurance and recovery provisions aim to stabilize Ukraine's economy and help it rebuild after years of conflict.
The Senate passed two notable pieces of legislation as well. The Safe Cloud Storage Act, Senate Bill 3023, limits liability for cloud service providers that store child sexual abuse material for law enforcement use, provided they meet strict cybersecurity standards, end-to-end encryption, annual audits, and secure retention protocols. This is intended to protect evidence integrity while encouraging private firms to assist investigations.
By setting clear standards, the bill balances the need for law enforcement access with privacy and security concerns, which is especially important as more evidence moves to digital storage.
The Stop Stealing Our Chips Act, Senate Bill 1473, amends the Export Control Reform Act of 2018 to create a whistleblower incentive program. It offers monetary awards from an Export Compliance Accountability Fund to individuals who provide original information, leading to fines against entities that illegally divert advanced AI chips to U.S. adversaries. The act also guarantees anonymity and protection from retaliation.
That incentive structure is meant to plug gaps in export control enforcement, especially in high-tech sectors where illicit transfers can have national security implications.
The Senate also passed Senate Concurrent Resolution 747, designating May 2026 as Renewable Fuels Month. The resolution highlights how renewable fuels, ethanol, biodiesel, renewable diesel, lower fuel prices, reduce dependence on foreign oil, support rural economies, and cut carbon emissions.
While a resolution doesn't allocate funding, it signals congressional support for the renewable fuels industry and can help shape public perception and future policy.
Finally, let's touch on the congressional record for May 22, 2026. The House opened with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, then adjourned until May 26th. During the session, members considered executive communications on biological select agents, a final rule for the Affordable Care Act, and a presidential notification about a national emergency concerning Belarus. The day also saw the introduction of several public bills, a repeal of the Hughes Amendment to the Firearm Owners Protection Act, a pilot program authority for the General Services Administration to sell underutilized federal property, and an amendment to the Internal Revenue Code allowing 5-year carrybacks for the low-income housing tax credit. Resolutions included a call for Memorial Day remembrance of fallen service members and a recognition of the stigma surrounding menstruation.
Those procedural items may seem routine, but they set the stage for the substantive legislation we've discussed. For example, the low-income housing tax credit carryback could affect affordable housing development, while the GSA pilot program could generate revenue from unused federal assets.
To sum up, listeners should watch the progress of the Energy and Water Development Appropriations, the legislative branch funding, and the suite of foster youth bills, as they each have direct implications for infrastructure, government operations, and vulnerable populations. Keep an eye on the new House rules and the fast-track process used for the Homeland Security appropriations, because they could change how quickly future bills move. Also monitor the Build America 250 Act and the Ukraine Support Act for their broader economic and geopolitical impact. And stay tuned for the implementation details of the Safe Cloud Storage and Stop Stealing Our Chips Acts, which touch on cybersecurity and export control enforcement.
And don't forget the symbolic but meaningful actions like Renewable Fuels Month and the resolutions on Memorial Day and menstruation stigma. They reflect the values Congress wants to promote.
That's all for today's Capitol Catch-Up. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to subscribe and follow us for the latest congressional analysis.
Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.